The San Antonio Spurs lost the NBA Finals 4-1. The New York Knicks lifted the trophy after a 53-year wait. Victor Wembanyama, however, couldn't deliver the miracle people expected from him. He couldn't change the outcome of the finals. He couldn't stop the Knicks. And on the final night of the season, he had to watch the championship celebration from the other side. But there is something strange about Wembanyama's story. The nights that defined him were not always the nights he won. Sometimes he lost, but after those losses, people still talked about him instead of the winner. Because Victor Wembanyama's story is not yet the story of a superstar who has won everything. It is the story of a future people started fearing before it even arrived. And that story did not begin in San Antonio. It began just outside Paris, in a home where sports were not something people simply watched. Victor's mother, Elodie, played basketball and later coached young players. His father, Felix, had a background in track and field. So in Victor's home, sports were much more than a weekend activity. They were one of the languages the family spoke. But Victor did not devote himself only to basketball at first. He played goalkeeper in soccer. He learned judo. One sport taught him how to use his feet, while the other taught him balance and control over his body. Years later, people would try to understand how someone over 7 feet tall could move so comfortably. But the foundations had been built much earlier. Before reaching toward the rim, he had learned how to plant his feet. Before blocking an opponent's shot, he had learned how to close angles in goal. Before staying balanced through contact, he had learned how to understand his body through judo. Then, basketball began to take over, because the game was already part of his family. His mother's practices, the gyms, the basketballs, and the small instructions coming from the sideline. Victor did not discover basketball. He grew up inside it. When he joined Nanterre's youth program, he was already much taller than the other children. But his height was not the only thing that caught people's attention. Even at that age, he handled the ball far more comfortably than anyone expected from a big man. He enjoyed passing. He was not afraid to shoot. He did not want to be trapped inside the small area of the court, traditionally reserved for players his size. While people talked about how tall he was thinking about how differently he could play. And when he was only 14, one of the biggest sports clubs in the world came calling: Barcelona. Victor played in a youth tournament wearing a Barcelona uniform. For most children, it would have been an opportunity they accepted without hesitation. A massive club, a massive name, a more prestigious path. But Victor returned to France because during his short experience with Barcelona, he felt that his mistakes were not being noticed enough. People kept telling him how special he was, but he wanted to hear what he was doing wrong. That decision may seem small, but it may have been one of the most important moments for understanding Wembanyama's character. Even as a child, he did not choose the biggest logo. He chose the environment that would help him improve. He was not looking for admiration, he was looking for correction. Because it is easy to become a talent everyone praises. It is much harder to keep people around who are willing to tell you the truth. Victor entered professional basketball at the age of 15. While most people his age were still thinking about what career they might choose, he was already sharing the court with grown men. But his rapid rise was not flawless. As his body continued to grow, injuries followed. He missed games. He lost his rhythm. He learned early that the game required much more than talent. He moved to Ace Vel. He became part of a championship team. But even there, everything was not going the way he wanted. Victor did not only need a powerful club or a roster with a strong chance of winning. He wanted more. He wanted responsibility. He wanted the right to make mistakes. He wanted to discover his limits in an environment where the game was built around him. That is why he made one of the most important decisions of his career. He joined Metropolitans 92. The team was coached by Vincent Collet, who was also the head coach of the French national team. Collet's job was not to flatter him. While everyone else was telling Victor how incredible he was, Collet was telling him what he still needed to improve. That was exactly what Victor had been looking for. Because the greatest danger around him was not the opposing defense, it was believing he was already perfect before he had actually accomplished anything. At Metropolitans 92, the team was largely built around him. He was no longer just a tall kid with enormous potential. He was at the center of the team. The ball came to him. He made the decisions, and his mistakes became much more visible. And that was when America truly saw Victor Wembanyama for the first time. In October 2022, Metropolitans 92 traveled to Las Vegas. Waiting for them were Scoot Henderson, one of the most talked about young players in American basketball, and the G League Ignite. This was not simply an exhibition game between two teams. For America, it was a window into the future. NBA stars were sitting in the crowd. Executives were there. Scouts were there. Everyone wanted to find out the same thing. Was this unusual kid from France really as good as people said he was? During the first half, Wembanyama's team fell behind. Scoot Henderson raced up and down the court, imposing himself on the game with his physicality and explosiveness. For a moment, the story looked familiar. The powerful and athletic American star was going to overshadow the tall kid from Europe. Then Victor took over. He hit three-pointers. He blocked shots. He put the ball on the floor. He rose above defenders, and he finished the game with 37 points. His team still lost, but by the end of the night, everyone was talking about Wembanyama. It was a scene that would appear again and again throughout his career. The scoreboard said he had not won, but the future somehow seemed to belong to him, because some players attract attention when they win. Wembanyama could look like a threat even when he lost. After that night in Las Vegas, being selected first overall was no longer just a prediction. It was treated almost like a certainty. But when Victor returned to France, the show did not stop. With Metropolitans 92, he became one of the league leaders in points, rebounds, and blocks. He was named the most valuable player of the French league. Before turning 19, he had begun bending a professional league of grown men around his game. Then, the night everyone expected finally arrived. The 2023 NBA Draft. Adam Silver walked onto the stage. He announced that the San Antonio Spurs had selected Victor Wembanyama with the first overall pick. There was a sense of destiny in the selection. San Antonio had already built a dynasty around two legendary big men in David Robinson and Tim Duncan. Now they had been handed another body basketball had never quite seen before. But when Wembanyama entered the NBA, the expectations around him were anything but normal. People did not expect him to simply become a good rookie. They expected him to change the league. They called him the alien. He was presented as the future face of the NBA. Before he had even played his first game, he was already being held responsible for everything people believed he would eventually become. That was when Wembanyama's real burden appeared, because people did not give him time to develop. They acted as if he were already complete. Every great game was treated as proof of the future. Every poor game created new doubts. But Victor did not collapse under the expectations during his first season. He changed games with his shot blocking. With his ball handling and outside shooting, he moved beyond the boundaries traditionally drawn for players his size. He was named Rookie of the Year. He became one of the most impactful defensive players in the league, but one of the moments that truly expanded his story did not happen in the NBA. It happened in his own country. The 2024 Paris Olympics. This time, Victor was not only representing San Antonio, he was representing France. In his own city, in front of his own people, he stepped onto the court against the United States with an Olympic gold medal on the line. Standing across from him were LeBron James, Stephen Curry, and Kevin Durant, players he had grown up watching. France stayed in the game. Victor battled. He became one of his team's most important players in the final. But late in the game, Stephen Curry started hitting shot after shot. France lost. Victor received the silver medal, and he could not hold back his tears. He had lost again. But once again, he did not look like a defeated player. It felt as if he had stored something from that night, planning to return for it in the future. After the game, he said he was worried for his opponents in the years ahead. It could have sounded arrogant, but when you look at Victor's career, the statement carries a different meaning. He did not see losses as endings. He saw them as material for the next version of himself. But a few months later, he faced a problem much bigger than basketball. In 2025, doctors discovered deep vein thrombosis, a serious blood clot in his right shoulder. His season ended immediately. One day, people were talking about him as the future of the NBA. The next day, the conversation was not about whether he would play basketball again. It was about his health. For years, Wembanyama's body had been seen as his greatest advantage. Now that same body had placed uncertainty in front of his career. This time, there was no defender in front of him. There was no player he could shoot over. There was no basketball he could block. There was only waiting. There was treatment. And there was the challenge of enduring a process he could not control. During his recovery, he chose an unusual path. He traveled to China. He spent 10 days training at the Shaolin Temple. He practiced Kung Fu. He worked on meditation. He tried not only to strengthen his body, but to understand it in a different way. That detail captures Wembanyama's story perfectly, because he was never simply a tall basketball player trying to add more muscle. He acted like a student trying to solve the limits of his own body. From goalkeeping to judo, from basketball to meditation, he searched everywhere for something he could carry into his game. Once he received medical clearance, he returned to the court, and after his return, he took San Antonio much further than most people expected. For the first time in years, the Spurs became a serious championship threat again. In his first playoff run, Victor did not only gain experience, he reached the NBA Finals. And then the story returned to where we started, the New York Knicks. The Knicks did not try to stop Wembanyama with one defender. They wore him down with physical contact. They forced him to make decisions. They made his responsibility feel heavier. And most importantly, they were more prepared than San Antonio in the final moments of games. The Spurs held leads several times during the series, but they could not protect them. Their youth showed in the closing minutes. The Knicks punished them for it. Wembanyama had major moments throughout the series. He helped San Antonio win one game in the finals, but after 5 games, New York lifted the trophy. This time, he was not the young prospect leaving Las Vegas after a 37-point performance. He was not the 20-year-old crying after receiving an Olympic silver medal either. Now, he was the face of a team that had lost the NBA Finals. The responsibility was greater. The loss was heavier. But the question was still the same. Did this defeat reveal Wembanyama's limit, or was it the beginning of his next version? Because losses work in a strange way throughout Wembanyama's career. He lost in Las Vegas. America became became convinced he should be selected first overall. He lost in Paris. He told the world he would return stronger in the years ahead. His season was cut short because of his health. Then, he rebuilt his body and mind and reached the NBA Finals. Now, he has lost to the Knicks. And once again, no one believes his story is over. Instead, everyone is wondering the same thing. If a player can already reach the finals in this form, what will he become when he is complete? Because Victor Wembanyama can still improve. He can become stronger. He can become more stable through contact. He can reduce his turnovers. He can make better decisions late in games. His team can build a more balanced roster around him. And if all of that happens, the player we are watching today may not be the finished product. He may only be the first version. The NBA has already seen players like Shaquille O'Neal, who were almost impossible to stop physically. It has seen players like Stephen Curry, who changed the boundaries of the court. It has seen players like Nikola Jokic, who rewrote the job description of an entire position. But Wembanyama does not fully resemble any of them, because there is not one single skill that makes him special. He has the height. He has the wingspan. He has the shooting touch. He has the ball handling ability. He has the defensive instincts. And he is combining all of those things inside a young mind that is still learning. That is why asking whether Victor Wembanyama is currently the best player in the NBA may not be the real question of this video. He lost the championship. He has not taken over the league yet. His weaknesses were exposed, but none of that removed the threat he represents. If anything, it made that threat easier to understand. Wembanyama is not unbeatable. He is not complete yet either, and that may be the most uncomfortable part for the NBA, because you can analyze a finished superstar. You can learn his habits. You can find his weaknesses. You can build a defensive plan around them. But an answer prepared for a player who keeps changing may become useless only a few months later. The Knicks found the right answer in 2026. They wore him down. They forced him into mistakes, and they won the trophy. But no one knows how long that answer will remain effective. Victor Wembanyama did not win the championship this season. The scoreboard makes that very clear. But there is something the scoreboard does not show. His shadow is already hanging over the NBA's future. And if Wembanyama's story has taught us anything so far, it is this. You should not only watch him on the nights he wins, because Victor Wembanyama sometimes returns at his most dangerous after the nights he loses. Now the NBA faces a question. Will Victor Wembanyama continue adjusting to the league, or will the entire league eventually have to adjust to Victor Wembanyama?